Hi everyone, this is Tatiana Kozorovitsky. In this video, I would like to show you and explain you what main tools and equipment are required for corset tailoring. I shall start with some minor things and will gradually go on to the more important aspects. So, in order to make your working with patterns and fabric cutting convenient, you should get hold of a satin triangle ruler like this one. This is a most comfortable triangle ruler with a wooden handle. It's very handy for working on the surface. There is convenient marking both in centimeters and in angles, in other words, a small protractor. The right angle is very useful. If you can't find such a device straight away, don't let it disappoint you. I just want to show you that it exists and its usage is recommended. But if you don't have one, you can use an ordinary ruler. You need two types of insulator material for corset making. They are a simple electrician's tape, preferably white, to enable working with white fabric, and a masking tape that is about 0.6 inch wide. Then you also need some medium-sized scissors. They don't need to be very expensive. A size like this is enough. Another tool is this pruner. I have bought this one in an electrical equipment store or an appliance store. This is no garden scissors and no garden pruner. This is a pruner for electricians that cuts wire very easily. And we need it for cutting the boning. So handy. Speaking about the boning, I'm often asked which ridgeline bones are most suitable for our purpose. Please take a look. There are two types of bones sold here: the wide type, 0.5 inch wide bones, and the narrow type, 0.3 inch or 8 millimeters wide bones. From your emails and feedback, I know that there are also some 0.2 inch and 0.4 inch bones available. They can suit too. You should learn from your experience whether they fulfill their desired function or not. Today, there are many manufacturers producing these bones. Ridgeline bones were originally made in England, but you don't necessarily have to look for super-branded bones. There are also Chinese and Turkish manufacturers today, or any other that you can find, so just let yourself use their products. Why do I use a few types of boning at the same time in my work? I shall explain. Let me begin with the narrow ridgeline bones. Some bones stretch very well and can be assembled this way, which means they can be curved and shaped however you need. That is very useful for working on the inside of the corset. And there are also bones which cannot be assembled like this, no matter how you try. But we need this as much. When you're stitching on the vertical bones, you don't want any threads or fishing line sticking out of the covering. In other words, the bones, perfect for the quilting of cups and various shaped cutouts, are not suitable for vertical quilting and vice versa. The same thing can be said about the wide ridgeline bones. Although they are never assembled or bent, they have grooves of varying sizes along which you make a stitch. And again, there are wider or narrower grooves. Just use those bones that suit your personal purposes.
Косточки, которые вам подходят, те и используйте. Вот
Well, this is my sewing toolbox.
в работе. Из
There are also some additional tools.
предметов
One of them is a disappearing ink marking pen. I use this pencil made by the brand Prim. When you draw on the fabric, after some time, the drawing disappears itself. This pen is very handy for making on white and see-through fabric. But remember, if you use this pen on colored fabric, its tip may also get colored, which can later lead to leave-in stains on pure white fabric. This is why I always have two separate pens like this. I mark one of them with sticky tape or band-aid, so that I know that this pen is only used for white fabric. I leave the other pen used for dark and colored fabric unmarked.
Теперь давайте,
Now let us talk about feet a little.
в принципе,
Any sewing machine as a rule has some additional presser feet.
добавляются дополнительные различные лапки. Так вот, у меня
I have an industrial sewing machine
я имею основных
with two main feet required for corset tailoring. First of all, the basic presser foot,
лапка и лапка.
and then a wide-sided foot with only one ski-shaped part on the right.
При пошиве
You will need a specialty foot for stitching on a concealed zipper for skirts or dresses. Here is mine.
для пришивания потайной молнии. Вот такая она у меня. И похоже,
As well as a one-sided foot with the left ski part.
все то же самое.
There is another very handy specialty foot, but it's no big deal if you don't have one at the beginning. It is a step-like presser foot that allows you to stitch on Rigelin boning very evenly.
Эта лапка позволяет ровно пришивать косточки ригелин. Но я вам
However, I will be honest, I have bought this particular foot only a couple months ago.
12
For 20 years, I have been sewing corsets using a basic foot, but I got this one when I found out that it existed. It is truly very convenient to use, but I repeat, it is not necessary to have it, it's enough to be familiar with it.
что совершенно не обязательно ее иметь.
I recommend having a silk cord for taking measurements of your clients. It should be about as thick as this one here.
Вот его толщина такая.
And a couple more words about the boning. You cannot do without additional securing of Rigelin bones when producing see-through corsets. Corsets with tummy control effect or big-size corsets. I also use such plastic bones. I know that such bones can be also sold per meter and rolled up. These are also suitable. Such bones are 6-7 millimeters wide and 1 millimeter thick. Trust your own opinion, note how flexible a bone is and how well it holds. It's enough for me to use the bones of this type in my work. Their length doesn't really matter. The bones that I use are about 14 inch long, but I'm not sure they will be sold the same where you live. I am simply demonstrating which bones I use.
И высота где-то тоже миллиметра полтора, наверное.
I would also like to say something about spiral steel bones.
Мы
I personally do not use them because of the following reasons. Firstly, they are expensive. Secondly, they make the corset much heavier. And thirdly, high humidity is typical of where I live, which cause such bones to rust. So that is somewhat of a historic tradition that only plastic bones are used here in Israel.
используются только вот такие пластиковые кости. Хочу вам показать.
Let me show you this hand glass. Why should we need a hand glass for corset tailoring? It turns out to be a very important tool. When you look at pictures in magazines, you often have to look narrowly and examine some seams or decorative elements in detail. And when you look at such pictures through a hand glass, you can even count the amount of buds or rhinestones on the garment that you've chosen as reference. I highly recommend this. I would like to mention a small hammer among the not so frequently used but nevertheless important tools. It should be of about this shape and size. A hammer like this is used to crush beads on the seam allowances of lace fabric to prevent them from getting under the needle.
И всякий там стеклярус.
I highly recommend this fabric glue by Gutermann. This glue is needed for corset tailoring in very small amounts, literally in tiny drops, and of course it is simply a must-have for the decoration of corsets, securing of applique and drapery. If you cannot find exactly this glue, you can just look for an analog in hardware or handcraft stores. Just make sure this is special purpose fabric glue. And now let us go on to some iron-on materials that you need to have and use. Iron-on batiste is the most widely used of such materials. Here it is in my hands. I am purposely rumpling it with my hands to show how elastic and thick it is. Maybe you can even see it through a little. Now I'm going to place it closer to the camera so that you can see its texture. This is the front side, and this is the adhesive side. I cannot name the manufacturer because neither I nor the shop assistant knows the name. Both sewers and distributors think first of all about the demand and the convenience. We buy a sample, fuse it, apply it, and make our own opinion of it. If it suits well, we keep on buying. If it doesn't, we put it aside. There is also some special stiff iron-on material used for the gluing of cups. I will try to show it closer so that you can see the texture. The grain of fabric is rather thick and pronounced, and the shoot resembles a fine fringe.
Идет тоненькая такая бахрома. Вот. И вот его
This is the adhesive side of the material.
материал. А вот
And this here is iron-on material produced by Hansel. It looks very similar to the other material I have just shown. Its grain of fabric is also rather thick, but this material has better quality and is more expensive. As you can see, I cannot pull out a lengthwise thread. It holds very tightly.
он и подороже, и по качеству. Да,
There is always a Hansel brand stamp on.
вот с этой фирмой. Этот фирменный штамп. Фирма Hansel. Может быть, вот здесь я...
Here is a lengthwise thread, if you can see. The usage of the material is the same. We strengthen cups with this stiff iron-on material for further quilting and forming of the rounded shape. Along with iron-on materials, we need some regular padding polyester. We don't need much of it, and it shouldn't be too thick. If you buy some rather thick polyester, for example for furniture padding, you can quite easily divide it to get the required thickness. You are going to see how one works with this material in our next tutorials, and for now I'm simply telling you about it so that its future usage doesn't come as a surprise.
А сейчас я вам о нем расскажу.
And now let us go on to some additional equipment that you might have to make yourself.
Скорее всего, вам придется
This equipment is necessary for steam pressing. Our main character here is a press iron. I am often asked which press iron is suitable for this purpose. Take a look. This is a semi-professional press iron. That is to say, it is not super powerful and not very expensive. Mine is made by Murphy Richards and an adjustable steam pressure regulator. Now I have set it at the 3-bar mark. This is an optimal steam pressure for pressing a dome-shaped cup. If the regulator is set at a lower mark, you can use this iron both in household use and in garment production. Using such lower steam pressure, you can also press literally every detail of your corset. But I shall repeat, a kilted cup should be pressed using no less than 3-bar steam pressure. To prevent the iron bottom from sticking to fine or synthetic fabric, I recommend buying an extra Teflon cap that covers the bottom of the iron. I use it all the time. I've taken it off only to show you. My press iron wears this little clothing both for household use and for sewing purposes. Then I can easily press either stiff iron-on fabric or cotton fabric and at the same time fine chiffon, organza, capron, or nets. In other words, I don't need to worry about the temperature being suitable for pressing. Trust me, this saves your time and your money, providing great quality. The next thing is a press board, just a regular one. Please take a look. This is an additional small sleeve pressing board. However, we need it for pressing corsets and their details during the working process. Now let us go to the most important and interesting part. These here are cup pressing molds. I have them in 3 sizes, a smaller one, a bigger one, and a very large one. These sizes don't have anything to do directly with the cup sizes. These molds are used for pressing various corset knots, which is why I use 3 unlike sizes. How can you make such a cup pressing mold? There are many ways. Some students even come to buying metallic bowls at IKEA, but it's better to buy some styrofoam spheres in a store. Afterwards, you cut such a sphere in half, put a layer of foam or patterned polyester over it. Or sometimes there are stiff cups, like those used for swimsuits in the 60s. It can be very easily secured with pins all around if you are using a foam base. And then this form gets wrapped in some iron-on material, in this case, batiste. Other ways of making such molds, including using plastic cups or plastic forms for Christmas decorations or disco balls. They are transparent and consist of 2 halves. You just take one of the halves, place the bottom part of a CD box over it, secure it with sticky tape, and cover with patterned polyester, taping it around with a thread. Then you put some iron-on batiste or a similar material over it. This is the first mold. And here is the second pressing mold. It is almost the same, only the semi-diameter of the plastic sphere is bigger. This one has a 5.5 inch diameter, and this one here a 4.7 inch diameter. It's no big deal if the bottom of a CD box goes beyond the diameter. It should not bother you because only the shape itself is important. So how do we use these molds? You will see it all later, but I have brought a corset for demonstration. It is very convenient when you put your garment on some additional stand to have it above the press board surface. You just put the corset cup onto the pressing mold and press it in circular motions while the edges of the corset are hanging down. If a fancy cutout needs to be pressed, a larger pressing mold will be required. You should put the cutout onto it and press it. There is another important tool used for pressing. It is a pear-shaped mold used for the pressing of side seams. I would like you to know that the beauty of this tool is no deciding factor. The important is the shape.
ее форму.
What is this pair made of? Again, it is made of incidental materials. I had bought America toy for children and turned it into this mold. My students have also used Skittles or cut molds out of foam block, giving them an oblique shape. The pear-like shape is the most important thing.
Такая круглая. Ваша задача
It doesn't necessarily have to be round. You always put this pear-shaped mold on the board or the stand and press your side seam.
боковой шов.
The curve of the side seam should almost always match the shape of the pressing mold. Slight deviations are possible.
Все равно обратите внимание.
Please note, you can see the required configuration on the screen now. We need an oblique slope that is slightly rounded from this side.
И последнее.
And the last important pressing tool is a cushion that I have made ages ago. It is stuffed with patterned polyester. You could also stuff it with sawdust, river sand, or anything else that suits. What is it used for? It is used for sponging. In other words, for ridding the garment of extra moisture after wet heat processing.
Будет удобно в работе. Воды
It is also used for placing under various corset details.
положить и выутюжить.
This cushion is not only handy for pressing, but it can also serve as a stand for our pressing molds.
Дополнительных еще. Ну, а теперь
And now a few words about our main assistant, the mannequin.
вот посмотрите. Мой
This is a very basic mannequin that I use in my everyday work. It is made of styrofoam. It is a usual X display mannequin that is normally used in shops for the demonstration of clothes.
что самое важное?
What is important here? It needs to be easily pinned. Adjustable plastic mannequins with extra screws won't suit. And you really don't need a mannequin with detachable arms and shoulders. Your mannequin should be light and convenient. It doesn't necessarily have to stand on a leg. You would need a leg when sewing lawn dresses or full skirts, but for working on corsets, you just need the torso that you will always spin and turn. That's why it should be light. For example, I place it like this in front of me when working on the drapery.
Это наш
This is our main and favorite assistant.
помощник. А сейчас я пару слов.
And now let me speak about the sewing machine. My dear friends, you really don't have to start with some very expensive and professional equipment. Do you have a hand sewing machine, a treadle sewing machine, an electric, or an all-purpose one? Well, then just use it.
На ней. Только тогда,
Only when you feel that you are starting to get more professional at this, when you start wanting to save some time,
у вас
or the stage quality doesn't satisfy you anymore, then I really recommend you switching to an industrial sewing machine. I'm telling you again, do not be carried away by the super electronics. A regular industrial straight stitching sewing machine is more than enough. Mine is produced by brother.
это фирмы Бразер. При покупке
When buying a sewing machine, please pay attention that it should be calibrated for working with light female clothing. Do not buy a machine calibrated for working with thick fabric.
на пошив толстых тканей. Да,
Check the quality and power of the engine. The mechanics can always get calibrated by a serviceman, but the engine seems to determine the main power of the machine as well as its price. Consult with a professional before making a purchase, and you will receive the necessary explanations. Dear colleagues, I have just made a short review, a short trip around this equipment world.
по оборудованию. И
I wish you the best of luck.
удачи.
Enjoy the learning process.
Приятного обучения.
You don't have to use the very same materials and tools that I have demonstrated. I wanted to give you a general impression of what is to be used, but everyone has their own preferences, their own scissors and handy pressing tools. Do create your own working environment. Our tutorial is now over. I thank you for your attention. You are learning with Tatiana Kozarovitsky. Remember to subscribe to my channel and the newsfeed of my website, CORSETacademy.net.